We're back to the Iberian Peninsula for the inspiration for our build today, and more specifically I've based the build on this beauty just north of Lisbon in Portugal. The best way I can describe it is a partially deconstructed Cloverleaf fused with a Dumbbell service interchange. I don't know, maybe one of you guys can give it a better description in the comments. Whatever you want to call it or describe it, what we've got here is an interesting 5-way interchange able to service both highway and local roads. So I'm going to show you how to build it, feel free to build along. We're back on Ron FX Interchange test map today. If you haven't seen it before, there's 4 banks of traffic spawners to give some consistent traffic flow from each direction. Super useful as a starting point for these interchange guides. So taking the existing roads out, I want to build the first road on something of a slight curve. 1, the real one's on a curve too, and 2, it always looks a little better on the eye and it appears a little bit more realistic doing it that way. I'm going to pull over the main highway bridge, again at a little curve. I want the bridge effect, so I'm going to use a height of 8.75 meters, and using roughly the same lengths on each side, I'm going to bend the curve at roughly the halfway point, and that's just going to be where it's going over the road. I'm happy with that curve, so I'm going to delete it back to the road, and we're going to keep the highest points in place where it's actually going over the road. But I'm going to replace the end of the curve with a similar ending and a similar curve, but we're going to bring it smoothly down to ground level. And I'm just going to repeat that same process on the other side. And that's looking really nice, really smooth, sweet. On to some loops now. If you've seen some of the previous videos, you'll know how I usually do these loops. We'll create quarter circles, then semicircles to complete it. So I usually use approximately 50 meters. So pull along the first road 50 meters, then out at a 90-degree angle, another 50 meters or so. Drop the height by about a third. So here I dropped it from 8.75 meters down to 5. We can finish off by using the continuous curve. So pull straight out from the end of that quarter circle and then pull along at 180 degrees until you hit the road you're trying to connect to. So bottom highway here. Pay attention to the snapping options I'm using. Having all the snappings can make things a little bit more difficult. But that's it. I'm going to create another loop on the other side, and with these in place, I'll just need to correct the traffic direction. That little marker I've dropped down serves no purpose other than just giving me a visual reminder of the orientation of the build. When you start spinning the build around, it can be easy to lose track of which side you're working on. Bridge number 2 will be a one-way road, and it will accommodate another loop. In a traditional Cloverleaf design, this loop would run straight off the highway, but here, traffic is removed from the highway at the same point as the direct ramp, and it's split off and then directed over the bridge. I guess there's some benefits here in having a longer weaving section on the lower highway to give traffic more space to change lanes. After extending the road out a little further to accommodate a loop that I think will be appropriate for the size of this build, I'm going to create the loop in exactly just the same manner as we showed you earlier on. Onto the other side of the road, and I'm going to freehand a curve hugging the existing loop. I want to bring the height down a little here too. Wasn't sure about that, but let's crack on with the direct turn element and see how it pans out. So I'll just use a simple curve here, and actually that came out looking pretty good. I'm going to use the complex curve tool to complete this section, and yeah, happy days. I love it when everything works first time. We've got some nice smooth stuff going on here. The changes in elevation is looking pretty good as well. Not mad about the little earth section here, but I'm going to address that in the detailing. If you're building along and you're playing vanilla, you can either keep that in place or just build it a little bit higher if you want the key wall effect. Now, on the other side of the bridge, we're going to have a 3-lane roundabout that will serve as a termination point for this particular highway. Again, nothing too complicated here. We're just going to use semicircles using a continuous curve, and we'll have 2 of them, just a case of simply hooking them in with a simple curve on each of the ends of the highway. Now on to our final bridge, bridge number 3. This will be taking traffic in the opposite direction as the second bridge. I'm going to make this a 2-lane as it will be delivering traffic onto the highway through our loop, and it will also give access to that second smaller roundabout that I'm going to have on the other side as well. That second smaller roundabout is just really going to be for local access. So similar idea as earlier, we're going to get the curve in at full height, and I'm going to delete one of the ends and then replace that with a section bringing it down smoothly to the ground level. I'm going to keep the other side at its current height for now. We'll revisit this a little bit later on. So I'm going to quickly create a direct turn off the highway coming off bridge 1 and onto bridge 3. We'll just connect this at ground level. And we're going to be enabling essentially just a bypass for the big roundabout. Learning from the previous video, I'm going to give the roundabout 2 lanes here to exit, as there will be quite a bit of traffic on this later down the line. Then we can bump it down to a single lane as it approaches bridge number 3. I'm going to create our large local road here. Remember, the areas where the local roads are coming from should have significantly less traffic than what you would expect on a highway. The roundabout won't handle that sort of traffic that you'd find on a highway, so if you put this in your city, remember that these roundabouts are essentially functioning as service interchanges, so make sure you design your connecting road appropriately, and obviously you'll still want to give your Sims plenty of other options elsewhere to get on and off the highway network. So don't overload it, basically, is what I'm saying. So for the second roundabout, I'm going to bring the ground level up to meet the height of the bridge. It will not let me hook that straight in without the game wanting to make the whole thing a bridge, which I don't want here. So let's create a little bit of normal road first on the ground, and then we'll just complete it with a smaller section. We'll need our fourth and final loop here, same technique as earlier, but as we have higher elevation ground here, I'd like to loop on the ground, so on the grass. So let's put a slope in place here. The loop is not going to connect straight into the highway, it's just a little bit too close to the other on-ramp. So instead, I'll run the single lane down a bit and connect it further down on the lower highway. As you can tell already, I'm not stressing about lane maths or perfecting connections or anything at this point. I'm just looking to get everything in its place, and then I can go through it and improve whatever elements need a bit of work. Now, this road wouldn't go where I needed it due to pillars on the bridge, so a quick delete and a redraw of the overpass was necessary here. For the second roundabout, I'm going to make this smaller one a 2-laner. That'll be more appropriate for a less populous area, and therefore should be designed for a lower expected traffic flow. This roundabout will give access to the lower highway via a direct turn, so let's get that in place as well now. Let's have a quick look at what we got so far. I guess it's something of a deconstructed Cloverleaf, isn't it? 2 of the loops have been removed from the highways, and one of them is only accessible from what will be something resembling a Dumbbell interchange. We'll need a long off ramp to give this highway access to the local roads on the roundabout, so I'm going to run a couple of simple curves here alongside the existing roads. I'll pop it straight into the roundabout and then create a bypass road to connect to the large local road. For the other traffic looking across the big local road via the roundabout, we're going to have a couple of lanes running straight into the end, and that takes care of the incoming traffic to the local big road. I'm going to connect 2 lanes into this roundabout from the end of the big local road. That's fine. I then created a bypass road so traffic could join directly to the highway bridge. If you're building along, do not do this. This bypass road is a mistake. I'll come back later and explain why. So we've got a direct right turn to build here. So when you're doing it here outside of a loop, what works well is running the road pretty much up to the loop here, just to the point of where you want it changing direction, just around the loop. Then you can use whatever curve tools you want to complete it. For the smaller roundabout, I want a couple of local roads here. We'll maybe come back and reconfigure these later on, but you can maybe have an office park, little industrial estate, maybe a little village perhaps, load of options. But as you can see, I made a complete hash of doing it, so a quick redo was in order. Okay, there we go. So let's get all of this stuff connected and tidied up. Now usually I wouldn't bother showing you how to connect up the roads, but this is an important one if you're using this test map. You'll see me creating a bypass for one of the banks of spawners here. On the last video there was no outgoing traffic in one direction on the finished build, I believe the reason for that was that I disconnected some of the spawners in the area that was spawning traffic from the arterial road direction. Same as what I'm going to be doing here, as I don't want all of that traffic overloading at the big local road or the roundabout at the big local road. But crucially, I also disconnected the outside connection. That outside connection serves as a destination, I believe, for the traffic spawners. So by creating the bypass road here, traffic will still want to travel to that side of the build as they've got somewhere to go, i.e. the outside connection. So if you're building on this map and you don't want full banks of spawners running, just make sure you're still providing some type of access to that outside connection on that end, okay? So with all the connections complete, it's now time to get some of those connections in a little bit smoother, and we'll do some lane maths to help keep traffic running without unnecessary hold-ups. So we'll drop a lane between some of the off and on ramps. We'll give some decent length merging lanes where we can. Where we have some less than perfect looking connections coming off the highway, it will just be a case of deleting them and redrawing them. Right, let's give it a quick run and see how it all looks. This should help give perspective, and hopefully we can see what's working well and what's not. One adjustment will be given a dedicated turning lane on our big local road. Upgrading this section to a 5-lane asymmetric should do the trick, and we can get traffic running in here nice and smoothly. They can merge into the main road a little bit later on. So really, that's the main functionality of the build done, with the exception of that ramp I mentioned earlier, which still needs to be corrected. I've got some nice detailing to show you, which I'll talk you through. I will be using mods for decoration. If you're building along vanilla and you're going to decorate with other methods, don't skip, as there will be a few adjustments in this section to the road connections, specifically around the roundabouts, which will make things a little bit smoother and let it, make it run a little bit smoother as well. I'm going to use the road mods here, and I'm going to get quite a few of the key walls in place. I just want the safety barriers more than anything else. It looks much better. This is your type of Cities Skylines 2 content. Make sure you're subscribed. There's loads more coming. And if you want a free and easy way to help the channel, a like, share or a comment helps out tremendously. Also helping out tremendously are my Patreon and YouTube members. Thank you so much for your generosity in supporting the channel in this way. I appreciate your contribution very, very much. Thank you. Now, I'm going to correct that mistake I spoke about earlier on. This little road here bypassing the roundabout looks like it makes sense, doesn't it? And in most cases that would be correct. It's just taking some traffic off the roundabout really on a busy section. However, there's a big issue. It's impossible to access this highway from the smaller roundabout. Thankfully, it's a quick and easy fix. So let's get it deleted, and what we're looking to do here is to connect this highway just after the big roundabout to this direct right turn, and that's basically it. Now all the roads can go in whatever direction you need to without having to find a turning spot somewhere else in the network. For the loops and roundabouts, I'm going to fill them in with the agricultural surface using the surface tool here and find it. I'm going to use the pavement and the concrete surfaces to fill in a few areas, as well as filling in some gaps between the highways as well. You can pick and choose different colours for different sections to give contrast from one area of the build to another. One nice detailing trick is to use the paths with snapping turned off, and we can create some easy curves to surface around. You can fill some awkward areas like this with some beautiful perfect curves, so just draw the path in where you want your curve, pop snapping on, and just run the surface tool along the path. It will snap there automatically for you and complete the area. Once it's done, you just delete the path. There we go. On road designs like these, those little extra curved sections really do help blend the whole thing in together. The next detailing tip I'll share, and you might have seen this briefly in last week's interchange, is how to go about getting a uniform striped effect. Super easy, you just create a path at the angle that you want. Once it's in place, you pull out a 90-degree angle, then create another path at exactly the same spacing. So I've used 12 meters here. You might need to play about with the snapping option sometimes. It'll occasionally not give you the length measurements when you're zoomed in like that, and at other times it might snap to guidelines and whatnot. So do what you need to do snapping wise, but just make sure it's uniform spacing and use your 90-degree angles. Repeat the process for the full area, and to prevent getting weird connections from the paths to the road, you'll likely need to turn off all the snapping apart from the right angles. Okay, this will let you take the path right up the road without any funky connections that will spoil the look of that effect. Once you've done all of them, just delete the sections that connect them, leaving the parallel paths that you want, and then don't forget to remove the walkways from the roads as well. For the bigger area of tree rows, I really struggle to get them lined up. Inevitably, they start going off at different directions and they start looking a little janky. So I'm going to create a little frame of paths here to build along, and we're just going to use that as a guideline. The only other vegetation I'm going to use is one of the flower beds, so a couple of props from Find It, and then going to use the circle tool, and we're good to go. The more I looked at that big roundabout, the more it started to bug me. I was noticing that traffic was despawning regularly at the oncoming 2-lane from the local road. I know that it's part of the game, but I still think it can be improved. Having a close look at it, it looks like the lanes were squished a little bit, so that might be a bit of an issue. And as I said earlier on, I kind of suck at roundabouts, so I'm still learning here. To remedy this, I'm going to give the incoming section a bit more of a curve coming in, joining the roundabout. For the outgoing road heading towards the main bridge, I'm going to do the same. And with that little section redone, I can see that we don't have the lanes squished together quite as much on that section, and the curves look quite a bit smoother as well. I did let the simulation run for quite a bit, and I did notice quite a bit less despawning. Didn't stop it altogether, but there was definitely less. That roundabout's looking a bit flat on the southern end, isn't it? Let's get that looking a little bit better. So again, I'm going to delete and bring the road in at a different angle, and it should look a bit more like a roundabout. What's going on here? I don't want to wait till this clears, so let's get the better bulldozer out. Let's get a shot of all of this and we can check our traffic flow. Brilliant, that's all working as intended. I think I'll make that little roundabout a little prettier as well, and why not? So let's have a look at the final product here. The curves are looking good. The extra surface detailing that we put in with the path outlines definitely helped bind everything together in terms of making it look one big cohesive build. The horizontal lines we put in that one section does give a nice little contrast to the free flowing curves we have elsewhere on the build. Very nice. Everything's running pretty good. We've still got a little bit of despawning at that big roundabout, but I can live with that. There's nothing more we can do with this design to improve on that. All the additional on and off ramps along with the lane mask we applied earlier on are certainly doing their bit to keep everything moving. So I believe overall it's a really cool build. Nice design, it's unique, super interesting to look at and super interesting to build. It's given me lots of ideas for future builds. What are your thoughts on this one? Let me know in the comments. Until the next one, here's a couple more videos to check out. Thanks for watching.